Okay, Daddy, I want you to start out by telling me the story that you told me last night about the German soldiers.
Toward the end of the war, the Germans had run out of gasoline and they were having to move all their material by horse-drawn wagons. And our planes were strafing the column of horse-drawn wagons, and the horses broke their traces and ran out into the forest nearby. So they came to our company and asked if anybody had experience riding horses, and I had experience as a boy riding a neighbor's horse. So I held up my hand and was appointed to go out in the woods and round up those horses. So I went out in the woods, and instead of finding the horses, I found a company of Germans. And they were so eager to surrender to an American rather than to a Russian that although I had no weapon with me and they all had their guns, they all surrendered to me, and I brought probably 150 of them back with me. Didn't bring very many horses, but I brought just a few of the horses were driven along the way by the German soldiers. But I came back and it looked like I had captured those men, and the truth of the matter was I might have lost my life if I had not captured them.
Let me ask you a question. Describe coming through the woods and realizing that you were coming upon a whole bunch of soldiers. How close did you get to them before you realized they were there?
It didn't take me long to realize that they were there because they were so thankful to see an American rather than a Russian soldier coming.
Yeah.
They were coming to me.
Did it scare you at first?
No, because they were, when the word that they used when they surrendered was "comrade, comrade," okay. And they were all just holding their hands above their heads and saying "comrade, comrade."
So you just kind of waved your hand and turned your horse around?
Follow me. Yeah.
What were they like? Do you remember if they seemed starved or?
They weren't starved, but they were defeated looking. Mm-hmm. They just had that composure about them, mm-hmm. That mm-hmm. they knew the war was over for mm-hmm. them.
Was that the closest you'd been to German soldiers at that point?
Yes, to that many German soldiers. Mm-hmm. I had seen dead German soldiers, uh-huh. and I had seen wounded German soldiers, but I had not really seen that many German soldiers in one place at one time.
Especially all by yourself out in the middle of the woods.
That's right.
And so when you rode up to the back where you were going, back to your group, what was the reaction of people? What did they?
Oh, they thought I was quite remarkable that I'd gone out there and captured all those Germans.
Did they come running out, or did they just?
They were just following me.
Uh-huh. I mean the other.
They were holding their hands above their head, of course, so they were not running.
What about your friends, though? The people back when?
Oh, they just kidded me and uh-huh. treated me like I was a hero when they knew I wasn't.
It does make quite a picture, you riding on a horse, bringing back all these soldiers behind you.
That's right.
Don't you wish you had a photograph of that?
Yeah, I wish I did. That's correct.
Well, talk about conditions there in the rain and the cold during the Battle of the Bulge when you guys were dug in.
During the Battle of the Bulge,
you may want to ask him what his job was.
Okay.
During the Battle of the Bulge, we were contending with the coldest winter in the history of Europe. In the time that Europe had been keeping weather records, mm-hmm. and so it was cold. It was very hard to deal with the problems of your feet. Most of the problems were not from enemy guns, but from your feet freezing. Mm-hmm. And we had combat boots that were rubber on the bottom, and so your feet perspired in the socks. So you had to carry one or two extra pair of socks inside your shirt, warming them up and hopefully drying them out. Whenever you had a chance to sit down and do something, you would change socks. Uh-huh. And that would help for 15 or 20 minutes, and then it would go back to the same problem mm-hmm. again. Mm-hmm. I was a Jeep driver, So I was not walking, and that made it all the worse for my feet to freeze because so I would pull the throttle out on my Jeep and get it running about 4 miles an hour, and then I would get outside and run alongside the Jeep and by the holding onto the steering wheel, so I could get circulation back in my feet.
I guess you weren't going down hills.
No, in that part of the country we were, and during that time we were really in the plain around the river. So it was really
Fairly
pretty
flat.
smooth.
You just jump back in when you had to put the brake on.
That's right. Well, I wasn't going that fast. Maybe I said 4 miles an hour.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was 3 miles an hour.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. And talk about well, first of all, tell me again what you were doing, what your job was.
I was a part of an infantry regiment, but my job was in headquarters company. In headquarters company, one of the platoons was the communications platoon. I was in the communications platoon and in the wire section. So my job was to string telephone wire from one command post to another command post and put a telephone at either end there so that these people could talk to one another. You say, well, couldn't they talk by radio? They could, but the Germans could intercept radio signals that they would have to actually splice into the telephone line, and that made that very unsafe for them to do that because we were watching against that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Where did you have to actually string the telephone line?
Stop for a moment.
1 second. Is it not working?
Well, I don't know. 'Cause it started beeping red. I mean, is it when it's